everyone, welcome to ToniRenee at Home. Today I am making for our dinner some homemade potato soup and some homemade Dutch oven bread. It's easy peasy. I promise you can do this. Even if you've never made bread before, I think you could make this bread. It is that easy. Everything goes in one bowl, it rises, you put it in the oven, it's done. So I need to get that rising because it takes 2 to 4 hours to rise. It's pretty chilly here today, so it might take it a little bit longer. And I need to get that going. So I'm going to bring you down here and show you what I'm doing. So I have 1.5 cups of warm water. And to that, I am going to add 2 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. You can use a packet, and it doesn't matter if it's active or rapid rise. Either one will work. I'm not very good at measurements. I'm a dumper. So I guarantee you that was not 2¼ teaspoons. And then to that, we are going to add 1/2 tablespoon of salt, and I'm using pink Himalayan. And again, this is a tablespoon measurement. So I did about 1/2 of it. I'm going to add something else that the recipe didn't call for. I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of sugar because yeast loves sugar. And we are just getting this all mixed up together so that yeast and the salt and the sugar all dissolve. Or mostly dissolves. And then before I add my flour, I'm just going to let it sit here for a little bit and kind of start to get some bubbles on the top so that I know it's alive and working. I keep my yeast in the freezer because it keeps longer that way. So I'm going to bring you around, show you what it looks like, and then we'll talk some more. Now that is bubbly right now because I was just whisking it. But I'm going to wait about 5 minutes and then come back and I'll show you what it looks like then, and hopefully it will be alive and you'll be able to see bubbles forming and working through that yeast water. Okay, can you see the difference in how that dough looks now? It looks like there's a bit of a film here on it. Those are not my bubbles any longer. Those are the proofing bubbles. This yeast is working, it's good, it's ready to go. I'm going to add the flour, so I'm going to get you set back up. Okay, I went ahead and cleared my counter and measured out 3¼ cups of flour. This is all purpose. You could use bread flour if you wanted to. Dump it. It just all gets dumped in there. And you're going to mix it up. And that's it. There's no kneading to this bread. It's a dump bread. You dump everything in the bowl, you stir it up, and you let it rise. Now this is going to be a sticky, messy dough. But the end result is so good. And because it's so sticky, I wouldn't recommend sticking your hands in this one. We're done. I'm going to use my finger. They're clean, I promise. Just to get that dough off the spoon, then I'll show you what it looks like. See what that dough looks like? It just made a great big ball in there. You can tell it's really sticky. That's what I just pulled off my spoon, is trying to get back on there. And you just cover it with a kitchen towel and you put it in a warm place to rise for 2 to 3 hours. And like I said, it might take a little bit longer here today because it's cold in my house. Okay, I'm gonna leave this alone. Don't worry about over mixing it. You're not gonna. This is seriously the easiest bread. All we've done is dump the ingredients in this bowl and mixed them up. I'm gonna wash my finger and my spoon, get this covered and put it in the oven where it's warmer. Okay, got a kitchen towel on my bread, on the bowl, and we're just gonna leave it in there, and I'm gonna come back in a couple of hours and I'm gonna check it. We'll see what it looks like. I'm gonna get started on those potatoes. So I have about 6 medium potatoes here, and I'm just finishing up peeling my last one. Shh, Sadie. If you hear my dog whining, she can't stand it when I'm standing at the island and not paying attention to her. So, isn't that right, baby? She is so spoiled. Okay. Set this out of the way. I'm going to give these a quick wash. Be right back. Got my pot sitting here. I'm going to move it over here so you can still see what I'm doing. I'm just going to cube these is all I'm going to do. I want them to be bite-sized pieces. Sadie, you're a mess. And that way they'll also cook faster. This is an old family recipe. I have eaten this since I was a little bitty kid, and it's actually a potato noodle soup. I make little dumplings or noodles to put in it, and it makes it go farther and taste better. My son actually likes the noodles. My youngest son likes more noodles than potatoes. So good, so easy. And I'm actually going to cover these in some water while my bread is in the oven rising. All right. Should have bought my scraper. Okay, gonna wash my hands real quick. Okay, you can see there aren't really that many potatoes in there, but it is just Adam and I. So I'm gonna get these covered with water and let them soak while for about an hour maybe. And then I'm gonna rinse them, and that'll help get some of the starches off the potatoes. Cold water. Okay, so the potatoes are just covered. They don't need a lot of water, but I need to chop up at least 1 onion so later when I'm putting the soup together, it'll be in there. Be ready to go. This is a really good sized onion, so I'm just going to use the one. This is a bag of onion tops and bottoms and peels that I save in the freezer. And then when I go to make some homemade broth, I will have these to throw in there as well. These can be cut small, chopped small, big, it doesn't matter. There used to be a Food Network, I think it was Food Network, a show. She was from New York. And she would say, chop, chop in the pot. Do you know who I'm talking about? If you do, leave it below, because I've been thinking about her lately, and I cannot for the life of me remember her name. Back in the freezer. And I'm just going to set this in the fridge. Okay, get this out of my way. Get these in the fridge. Okay, these dumplings are very, very easy too. I like cooking easy. These are our eggs from our chickens. I almost said from our garden. These are our eggs from our chickens. Just break that up a little bit. I am adding some milk, and that might have been 1/4 cup of milk. And then we splash some across the counter. That's important. Good grief. Just mix that a tad bit. I'm going to add some salt. I'm hiding behind here. Salt. Again, I don't measure. Pepper, it's just to taste. I probably put maybe 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And maybe 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm also going to add just maybe 1/4 teaspoon, maybe a little bit more than 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. That will fluff up the dumplings. That is also optional. You do not have to add that. And I am just going to add about 3/4 cup of flour and give it a stir and see where we are. See how that looks. That might be enough. If you end up getting a little too much flour in here, add a splash of milk. If it's too much milk, add a splash of flour. Mine's a little too wet, so I'm going to add some more flour. I think it usually ends up taking about 1.5 cups. Again, no measures. Making a mess is very important though. And that's what I do best when cooking, is making a mess. Okay, I think that's going to do it. I'm a maniac in here this morning. Now this one, you don't want to overmix this because it can make your dumplings tough. But again, just like the bread that we made, it has come together in a ball. And I am just going to pull this piece of parchment paper over here and sprinkle some flour on here. Parmesan cheese container from Sam's. Save them. I use it for dredging my meat if I'm making gravy. when I don't need a whole lot of flour and I don't want to get out that big old canister. I'm going to dump this on this parchment paper, get some of this flour on my fingers and clean off the spoon. Okay. I'm not going to really need this. I'm just going to move it around in this flour. And I'll tell you, let me see that again. This little piece of dough right here, I'm shaking the flour off of it so you can see. I make my noodles about that big. Pea size, maybe a little bit bigger. I'm just doing this different today. You can go straight from the bowl into the pot, little bitty pieces if you want to. However big a size dumpling you want to put in there, go for it. These are depression area. These are depression area. These are depression era meals. So I don't think they did a lot of measuring. At least the farm women that were in my family didn't do a lot of measuring. Okay, so I've drained the potatoes and I've put some water back in them. They're covered by about 1 inch. And now we are going to add a whole stick of butter. That onion I chopped up earlier. Salt. Probably about 2 teaspoons of salt. 1 to 2 teaspoons, again, to taste. About 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And I'll taste it and I'll adjust this later if I need to. And then I'm going to add some milk. I have 2%. You use whatever you have. Doesn't make any difference. This just makes the broth richer. And I probably added about 2 cups. Now we're going to start adding those dumplings. Let me show you what I did with these noodles. I just put the dough still on that parchment paper on a cutting board and used my pizza cutter to cut it in strips. And now I'm just going to start adding them to the pot. This is about how wide I cut it into strips. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to tear them up, throw them in there. So I'm going to finish getting these in. And see, they're tearing apart. So I'm going to get these in here. The noodles and the potatoes cook about the same time. I've got it on high right now just to bring the heat up, but because there's milk in here and dough, you don't want it to stay on high. And I'm going to turn it down on low and just let it cook for a while anyway. So I'll get these noodles in here and come back. The noodles and the potatoes will cook about the same time. There's one more thing I'm going to add, and it's totally optional. You do not have to, but I like the way it makes, maybe 1/2 teaspoon. I like the way it makes I like the way it makes the soup taste, and that is celery seed. And I'm just going to let this simmer. I'm going to go ahead and turn it down even though it hasn't come to a boil yet, because dinner doesn't have to be ready for a while. So I'm just going to let this simmer until it's done. And that's it. Old-fashioned potato soup. Been in my family for years. Because it's got milk and noodles, I'm not going to set the lid all the way on there. I'm going to kind of set it off to the side. Turn it down to about a 2. And this with homemade bread, amazing. I'll bring it back when it's done. Okay, let's look at this spread. We've got a good rise, a really good rise. So, I've got a round scraper. Just gonna scrape it away from the sides. Okay. Getting back that empty Parmesan, now filled with flour, canister. Just going to put a little flour on the edge. And we're going to turn this dough out onto this parchment paper. And there goes Sadie again. Look at that. Okay. I am just going to pull these edges up and kind of pinch them together. And I am going to use this parchment paper to kind of flip this dough over to the center. It's okay if it sticks a little bit. And it makes a nice pretty circle until I touch it and it sticks to my fingers. Nice pretty circle. And now I'm going to grab my Dutch oven that I've already had heating in my oven at 450. You'll leave your Dutch oven with the lid on in your oven as it heats up at 450. And then leave it in there an extra 20 minutes. And do not touch. Super duper hot. Gonna take off the lid. And we are going to pick up this bread, parchment paper and all, and just put it in this Dutch oven. Put the lid back on and put it in the center rack of the oven. Let's take a look at this bread. Oh. Now, one thing I didn't say a while ago is you can take a very sharp knife and cut lines in the top of your bread. I don't do that. This is a crusty bread anyway, and I feel like doing that makes crusty edges on the top that are really hard, and it hurts my mouth. So, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now the next thing you do is put it back in the oven. I'm just going to use this towel. Put it back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes. And the way mine looks, it's probably going to be about 5. And then it's done. Five minutes. And just like that, this bread is done. Isn't that pretty? I'm gonna wipe off some of this flour. You don't have to. Let this rest for about 10 minutes before you cut it, and this bread is done. Wasn't that easy? Mix everything in a bowl, let it rise, bake it, done. There you go. Easy peasy Dutch oven bread. You guys, this soup is done. I did taste it. It is perfection. Perfect comfort food on a chilly day like we've had today. I love the fall and I love making soups and I love these comfort foods. So good. So easy. The bread was easy to make. I hope you try these recipes. Please let me know if you do. I cut into this bread. I thought I had hit record. Clearly I didn't because there's no footage. This is so good. Still pretty hot. Wow, that is perfect. Perfect. See the steam? This butter just melted right into it. And I like the ends of homemade bread like this. Nothing better than homemade bread with a bowl of homemade soup. Old-fashioned potato noodle soup. Dinner's gonna be good tonight. Okay guys, well that does it for today's video. Thank you for joining me. I hope you try one of these recipes. I think I'm probably going to keep them both together in one video, even if it ends up being a little bit longer. I'll get this figured out. So be patient with me as I get started. Hit the subscribe button and join my community. Give me a thumbs up. If you like this video, let me know below. If you're going to try one of these recipes, I will put the recipes in the description box, and I might even take a picture of it and put it on the screen so you can write it down, because I know if you're watching this on TV, which is where I watch most of my YouTube videos, you can't see the description. So I will probably write it down or type it out and take a picture of it so you can pause it and write down everything. In the meantime, I will see you in the next video. Bye.